It's so good to see you again, Topaz. I feel like you're my friend. I know we only had one conversation, but we connected so deeply that it just makes me happy to see you.
Same here. Same here. I just re-listened to our episode and it's a rich one. It's a good one. I think it's one of my best, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, you were so good and I loved our conversation, which is why I'm so happy you're back. I
Thanks for having me
feel
back.
Yeah, it's so good to be having these more deep, meaningful conversations. I feel like the world has gotten so divided, and
Ooh.
we touched upon this a little bit before, but gosh, it makes me sad, to be honest. And I think that the work that you do in the world offers people a different lens and also specific tools. So I kind of wanted to play with that
Mm,
today.
great. Let's do it.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you read in Time magazine. So there was an article that just came out. It was called How Estrangement Has Become an Epidemic in America. Now, I know
Hmm.
you're in South America, so I don't know how COVID and politics affects globally. I wonder if you have a lens
Hmm.
on that. But it said that one in two adults is estranged from a close relative. And I remember during COVID, friends saying, I'm not talking to my mother because she won't get the vaccine and she's not welcome into my house. Or I can't believe my, kid is voting for this like just so much division and nobody wanted to connect. It's worse. I thought it
Yeah.
couldn't get worse. It's worse.
Yeah. Yeah. It's trending in a bad direction. And now with the advent of AI, when, it's really like you believe what you see,
Yes,
right? Not just what you read, but it's got to be what you see. Now, even what you see, you don't know whether to believe it. And yeah, I think it's just oil on the fire.
totally. And I was thinking about that too, the tech piece of it, the AI piece of it. They say, like, people are more connected, like our ability to reach out and connect is like there's so much more accessibility, but there's also a loneliness epidemic. So I wanted to unpack some of this with you and just like wonder like how can we use your work to heal our most important relationships?
Mm.
I know that's kind of a big question, but you can let me
I
know,
mean,
like, even just why you think we've gotten so off path and how do we get back? How do we get back on path, Topaz?
well, what we have at our disposal are these incredible tools.
Yeah.
There are these incredible tools, and we have to be conscientious about how we use those tools. Otherwise, the tools will use us.
Yeah.
And by tools using us, I mean other people can be using the tools to get things they want, such as your attention, such that they can advertise against your attention, such that they can generate income for themselves. Fine, that's what they're using the tool for. They create social media just to draw your attention. The more addicted you are to it, the more money they make because they're
Yes.
getting your time, which is
Yes.
frankly like one of the most valuable things on the planet is really your attention. Um, for me, like it was clear to me about, I don't know, 7 years ago that the future, like the most valuable commodity after water and air that people will be really vying for is attention. And they'll be giving
Mm.
you things for free for your attention. So
Oh,
soon we'll
wow.
have so soon we'll have self-driving Uber cars, right? My brother just got his wife got a Tesla. Well, I don't know what model it is, but he's like, check this out. We got in it and he just put in an address and hit go and just the car was driving. I mean, that's it. And then also saw what's that brand out in LA that
The Wemo.
the Wemo that's in a Jaguar. Oh my God. It's
No,
just
it's in a
driving.
Jag?
I saw a Jag. I saw two or three Jags in one day in a Wemo and with people in the back. And I just was like, oh my gosh. Amazing. So you get into a car and
Yeah.
you get a free ride, but you won't be able to control the advertising that's being shown at you. If you want to pay for the ride, then and really you'll pay for the free attention during the ride. Much like Spotify, you can get the pay for your, you know, you don't have to pay for your subscription. You just get advertisements shot at you. So that seems to be the future that's coming, and the technology is amazing. But the question is, what are we using it for? What are we using it for? And that could be done. We could talk about that globally, politically, socially in the public sphere, but what about you in your own life? You know, what are you using it for?
Totally. And I think the cost is so much greater than, yes, it's our attention. So if we're giving our attention to the things that are distracting us and also making us
Mm,
addicted, because
sure.
I always say I don't have an addictive kind of a personality. Like some people can, be more susceptible. And I don't even enjoy Instagram, but I find that when the app is on my phone, and there's a free moment, it's suddenly open and I'm doom scrolling. And then I come off, even if it's 5 minutes later, feeling so
Mm,
depleted. I don't
yeah.
feel energized and better. So, like, I don't know. I wonder also, and this is probably for neuroscience, this part of it, but what it's doing to our brain, because our brains
Sure.
weren't wired to be like taking in so many things. But
Yeah.
is there some thoughts about, I know curiosity is something we both share, deep curiosity. It's why one of the reasons I do this podcast. That's why I'm so happy to be seeing you and having these interesting conversations. Like there's so much richness when you're like willing to like go deep and like really get into
Yeah.
something. But is there a way to, I don't know, use curiosity or any of the tools that you teach in terms of connection to reclaim our attention and put it where it should go, which is literally usually the person we're sitting next to while we're both scrolling on our phones. You know what I
Well,
mean?
so yeah. So what do I okay, so what do I mean when I say how you use the tool? It's like if you're scrolling randomly through Instagram, so be it, then you end up like you, like me. I mean, I don't feel better after I use Instagram. I feel a less of a lack of I feel different things. But what's also great to use on Instagram is if you're planning a vacation to do some research on things. If you're trying to become a better um, you know, chef making pizzas out of your oven in the backyard, then you can find some great information there. Are you
Yeah.
using the tool to better your life, or are you kind of just going with the flow and letting it use you? AI, and there's play on AI, just better, not worse, whatnot, but it's here. It's
It's
going to be
here.
here. So are you using it to save yourself time?
Yeah.
You tell the AI, hey, I'm arranging a birthday party for my daughter. Here's who, the class is here. This is what I want. I'm looking for this. Can you please book the reservation? Send out, create the invite, send it out. And basically, what would take you maybe 3 days of time can be done like that. And then that gives you more time. So then what are you doing with that time? Are you going to go spend time with your daughter going for a hike? Are you going to go scrolling Instagram? Like the tools are double sided coins and or double edged swords. And I just think the impetus for us to be more conscientious of what we use our time on and the questions
Yeah.
we ask ourselves that derive different actions is more important now than ever. And I think,
Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, that's where I think. I think the impetus is on us now more so than it's ever been to really say, who am I? What am I doing with my time? What am I doing with my attention? What am I doing with my energy? Where am I investing it? Where am I cultivating it? It's getting a lot harder. It's getting a lot easier to hide and disappear into a numbness of kind of hits of endorphins of from whatever media, whatever it is. But it's
Yeah.
also getting a lot of harder in some sense to hide from doing that because it's like, okay, maybe I'll have more time on my hands. Maybe I'll have more options on my hands. I have more tools at my disposal. How am I using them? What kind of life am I creating? What kind of life am I designing? A la your book.
You're so
Designing a
funny.
life you love.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Although when I wrote that book, AI was not what it is and where it's going. So what I'm hearing you say too, a lot of that is just intentionality, which we're of a generation where we know what it's like to live without a phone. We know what it was like to
Mm-hmm.
use it as needed. And then now we see what it's like when it's literally a part of our day-to-day lives where we feel like, oh my God, I don't have my phone. What if somebody needs to reach me? Right. We've sort of seen it all. Our kids haven't. They're just growing up with this as a norm. So, right, we have maybe a level of discernment that we need to teach them. And as we also know, there's also a mental health epidemic. And one of the drivers of that is the social media and the way that the tech is using, because you've got kids whose prefrontal cortexes aren't fully developed until they're 25 with access to this tech, and they don't have the tools yet to do it. So, I was thinking when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to you today. It was sort of global and then more relational to like the everyday, but mental health, loneliness, major issues,
I think estrangement, I think, is huge. I mean,
and
like
the
another level
estrangement.
of it, another
Yeah,
level of
let's
loneliness.
start there since we did. So say more on that. I mean, how do we begin to heal that?
Right?
Yeah.
So think about politics. Every time an election comes around, the other side has to be badder, meaner, and has to be even more at stake. Otherwise, you're not going to motivate your base because we're so used to now like how bad it is that it's almost like a hit of endorphin. Like if it doesn't get bigger, you don't get the hit. You don't get motivated to go out and vote. You don't. So in some sense, we're on this incredible trend where every 4 years, it's a more dangerous world. And in some sense, it is. But the sentiment, in order to motivate the base to go out to vote for one party, is how horrible the other side is. I mean, the last election, both sides were saying this, this is the last democratic election ever.
Yeah.
Both sides were saying that. That's a
Yes.
threat.
Yes.
Um, so if you think of it that way, we are we are kind of patterning ourselves that every 4 years or whatever, every time it's just supposed to get worse and worse. And we're using language that makes the other side an even bigger version of evil.
Mm,
And that's why I think estrangement is a great word because that's different than loneliness and this mental health epidemic that we've had for years and loneliness. It's now that I think it's different now because there's COVID, there's the elections, there's Ukraine, Russia, there's Palestine, Israel, there's growing and growing conversations that are separating us within families, within friend groups. Um, I mean, I just had a very challenging conversation, not challenging, but it was very powerful conversation with one of my best friends who basically didn't talk to me for a number of months because he felt very challenged to have the conversation with me about Palestine and Gaza. And yeah, it was how do we lean into that? And I think you talk about curiosity, which I think is really helpful. But we should also acknowledge that not all of us are curious, or are we? Maybe we are curious, but maybe we're curious about different things. Someone asked me something last week. Do you think we're all curious? Yeah, I think we're all curious, but I think we're all curious about different things.
yeah.
One person might be curious about people, another person might be curious about problems. So when I ask you, tell me about yourself, one is listening about your life story. Maybe the other one's like, ooh, what are the problems that person overcame and how did they? So maybe we're curious about different things. So maybe it's not about pretending to be curious and giving it a blanket statement, about being curious. Maybe it's about be curious about what you're curious about and speak from that place. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what it is. And then in terms of being estranged and such, I think we have to ask each other questions that put ourselves in other people's shoes. So if you're gonna have that conversation with them, instead of saying, "Why do you think this way?" Maybe the question is, "What do you feel is the hardest thing for me to understand your point of view?"
Mm,
Just so that you're putting them in your shoes and you're starting to like explore different perspectives. And I just think once again, what you get good at is what you practice, you get good at. And we are practicing now our own confirmation bias that the algorithms reinforce.
totally. Because they're just
So
going to show us more of what we believe anyway.
yeah, exactly.
We're not going to see other viewpoints or
Mm-mm.
no.
You know, and I think there's something about vulnerability where oftentimes we talk about vulnerability, and when you think about vulnerability, you often think about a person sharing their vulnerability. They're courageously opening up and sharing a bit of themselves. I think which is a courageous act, it's vulnerability for sure. But I think we also need to acknowledge that part of vulnerability too is in the listener.
Mm,
So I'm curious about, we have a different point of view about things, and I'm all right. I need to find what my curiosity is about it. Maybe it's not why you have those thoughts, but why is it that if you are a mom who do this and have these values at the same time you support that, does it make sense to me? I'm curious about that. Okay, ask a question about that curiosity from coming from that place of curiosity and listening to it in a way that gives you a sense of understanding someone else's point of view without trying to change them,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. No, I love the
And,
way you
and
reframe those
but
questions.
but also being aware that your question is going to be something that will challenge your own confirmation bias. So don't bring your own confirmation bias to the question, nor to your listening of the answer to the question you asked.
Yeah,
Because then like for me to hear your so one to hear another person, that the vulnerability is in me just sitting in that space and taking it in a legit way instead of trying to respond and convince you otherwise or getting into it tit for tat. I think first we need to begin with listening, you know?
totally. And I have a couple thoughts. One is I literally never talk about politics or religion on the show because there's so many shows that do.
Yeah,
And this to me is like a space for people to just come and figure
sure.
themselves out. But we can't ignore the fact that all this stuff is happening globally. And as somebody who deeply cares about the future of humanity and is such an empath, when I see patterns, I also see patterns. We need to do something that starts us on a path of healing. And I just feel like you have, because of the work you do, these unique set, like a unique lens and set of tools and just ways of thinking, even just what you just did with the reframing of the conversation. And the second is, I also wonder if, it's interesting. So I'm from Boston originally.
Mm-hmm.
After there was a bombing, Boston's called
Sure.
Boston Marathon. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So there was this incredible moment within all the tragedy where people came together in a way like I'd never experienced before to support each other, like high-fiving the police afterwards, like giving them a lot of appreciation and community and people rushing in to help people who were wounded. Like it really was this moment of beauty within this tragedy. And
Right.
my belief is that that is who we are always. That is who we are at a soul level. That's why we're here. It's like we are these loving beings. And then all of this, there's like an infiltration, like you said, of our attention. And then we have a need for safety, right? And certainty. And so we're going to go where it feels safe. So I wonder if
Mm.
you were saying like this ability to listen, I wonder also sometimes if it's like, you know what, we're just going to connect on the fact that we love each other and we're just not actually going to approach these conversations. But is that a cop out? Like I literally wonder about that because how sad is that for a grandparent not to see a grandchild over ideology? You know what I mean? Like the kids don't care. They don't
Yeah.
care. They need that community. Like, and what does that
Yeah.
teach them? Like, where do we go from there if we just keep breaking family structures?
What's Gandhi's line about
Be the change you
eat?
want to see in the world.
Right. So a version of that is if we can't have these challenging conversations with our family members or very our friends, how can we expect the world
It's true.
to have those conversations?
It's true.
How can we expect that? And if we don't make an effort and we don't sit in that discomfort and actually try to practice listening to each other, how do we expect like governments and larger populations to do that on a public or political level?
Yeah.
Like if it has to start with us. It has to start with your ability to sit in that discomfort and search for a curious part of you and understanding why someone else is in that place and not to pass the judgment because frankly like we're all in our own silos of information of our own confirmation bias and ultimately um I mean it's like what is it, we're all living in the same world but in different realities,
Mm. My God, it's so deep.
you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah, it's
that
true
those
though.
realities are going to get even more and more visually real and compelling now with Sora
AI.
came out this week and
Let's talk about um curiosity. And just connecting one another because I know that's like at the heart of what you
yeah.
do. Yeah.
So what comes up for me, especially in terms of estrangement, I think we all have that person or the people in our life that do not see what we see. They have different opinions. We cannot believe that they see the way they see, and they probably feel the same way about us. Whether it's vaccines, whether it's who you vote for, whether it's yeah, if the UFOs are
Religion,
really
wars. Yeah. Like
yeah,
there's certain hot
you know,
topics we know. Yeah.
you know. So the thing to tap into, in my opinion, is to search for the curiosity in you
Mm.
about them. And the more emotionally charged you are, the more important it is to find that curiosity, because the curiosity is what can actually deactivate the impending explosion that could happen. And the explosion is because you're coming at them in a way that attacks them, because you want them to admit they're wrong. You want them to say that you're right. You want them to say they're stupid, whatever it is. So you're coming at them with like an agenda. You're coming at them with a judgment. So the way to deactivate that is to search, take a breath, and find the curiosity. I mean, a very simple example is I had a big disagreement with my brother. I was really upset. And I really wanted to have an argument. I mean, I wanted him to apologize. I wanted him to see the error of his ways. And for a moment, I had to take a pause because I knew that wasn't going to get me the result. I mean, if I come at him with a question from that place, he's just going to protect himself. And, we're having a defensive conversation and passive aggressive. That's not going to get there. So take a breath, feel my pain. I'm upset that he let this happen. Well, we were raised by the same mom. We're the same value. We have this, we have that. Why? What? He's not a bad person. Well, what's the world that he's living in that that he rationalized that? And maybe if I can understand that, I can sympathize. I don't have to agree with it, but I could understand. Right?
Yeah.
And so you have to take a pause. You have to really ask yourself the curious question. If you're not curious, don't have the conversation. At least you're not gonna. That conversation is not necessarily gonna help build bridges of understanding. And you can shape the question such that it reinforces a space for you to learn from one another. Can you explain to me how it is that you got from what we were like in college when we had these views to where you're at now? I'd like to know,
Mm.
because we went to college together. And now 20 years later, you're on the other side of the spectrum. Like, what
Mm.
have you seen and experienced that has led you to where you're at now? Because I'm still here, like on this other place,
Interesting.
and you're my best friend, or we went to college together. And like, how is it that, like, or mom, you raised me? And how is it now we're on totally other opposite sides of the political spectrum? You raised me with your values. And what are you seeing? What are the things that have happened to you that have led you there that is so different than the values I feel you raised me? Notice you say I feel, because it's not objectively true. It's just like that's my experience. My experience is you raised me with these values, you position me to have these thoughts, these opinions, where you've cultivated that, and now you're over the way here and we don't see eye to eye. I'd love to understand, how did you get there? You know, take me on your journey, right? How do you see it? Okay. And just by saying how do you see it suggests that their view is valid, right?
Yeah. You're not
And
making them
oftentimes, like,
wrong from the
you're not
start.
making them wrong, and
Yeah.
you're not suggesting one is true and one is not.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think all of us want to be seen. And when
Yes.
someone sees you, they don't have to agree with you. When they see, you're like, okay, they see me. I respect that.
Yes.
Because they respect me.
And then there's safety again here.
There's a sense of safety, even if we disagree.
Absolutely. And has it changed with like how you're doing your work?
And we have a production coming up in January, 3 days in Los Angeles. And it's, man, I can't tell you, it's one of the best feelings for me at this point is when I send because we have a lot of people who apply. So when I send out the message saying that they're welcome to a slot, and how I get a response in 20 minutes, overwhelmingly positive. Like, it's like a family feeling. It's like, great, we're doing this, and people really honor it. And I always check to see how many videos have they seen, how many questions they ask, because that really pushes me to have to create new questions. Because a lot of the questions they've seen so many times that they've already answered it when they play the card games. They've already answered in the head by to themselves or by watching so many ad videos. Um, and so now I'm really looking at the questions. Now I'm reading a lot of poetry,
Oh.
because poetry pulls at like at this thread of this experience we have of life and names
Mm.
it in a different way, and by naming it in a different way, it pulls out a thread of the experience of life in a way we haven't seen before.
Mm. What
Right.
are you reading?
Well, right now I'm checking out David White,
Okay.
that famous Irish poet. Um, he calls them essays, where he writes about whether it's death or revelry or loneliness. But I read it because when you read the poem, you kind of these conjugate the sequence of words that create images in your head or feelings. They kind of give you a different nuance, a sense to something that has always been there, but you haven't quite illuminated or felt or seen in that way until you read those words.
Yep.
And I think the power of questions, also the sequence of those questions, can do a similar thing. They can give you that moment, especially the pause. You want the pause. You want to ask a question where, Michelle, what's your favorite lie you love telling yourself? I mean, you don't answer it, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well, you're right.
what?
I was immediately like, wait, because first you have to like process the question because you do it
Yeah,
in a way that makes you literally, your brain has to take it in.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so creating questions that pull out a strand or put you in a position where you explore a strand of the human experience via your relationship with someone else in a new way. And so I'm putting a lot of time into those constructions, especially when people are coming and have seen all the and videos and all the questions, and I really need to give them a new experience. I need to create that pause, that room for exploration for them.
Well, let's follow on that because I know you say that there are three. So, following on that, what are the five
Things that can
components that
to
construct a
construct,
good question? Yeah.
yeah. So, well, one is don't ask a binary question. So if the question starts with is, are, do, should, would, if your question starts with any of those words, you are asking a binary question.
Okay.
Is this the right thing to do? Yes, no. Should we go left or right? Right. Would you like to go to the restaurant or to the movies? Movies. Is, are, would, should, do. All that. Do you want ice cream? If you start with those words, you got a binary question. So there's
Okay.
not much room for explanation with a binary question.
Okay.
Ask questions that are constructive. We talked about in the last episode about like how the questions you throw, the stick you throw for your mind to go find the answer. Questions you ask fetch the answer. Ask a question that fetches you a constructive answer, right? Why did she dump me? Well, that's not going to fetch you really constructive answers. Get your whole list of why she dumped me. Said, what am I going to carry from this last relationship into the next?
Hmm.
What am I letting go of here so that I can gain later? What am I practicing daily in preparation for what? Which is nice because that's like a double sided. What are you preparing for? Plus, what are you preparing for what eventuality? But so I spent a lot of time in the construction of questions and listening to questions.
Love it.
Um, I had another met a friend and he said he was changing industry and he was going into development of real estate. And he said, and the question he asked himself, he was just telling me this in the story. I go, wow, that's brilliant thinking. He was moving away from filmmaking into real estate development. And he said, who can I get to pay me to learn the industry?
Wow.
He didn't say, how can I learn the industry? He said, who can I get to pay me to learn the industry? So then he took his skill set as a filmmaker to go work for a developer to do marketing for them. And by doing that, he
So
got paid and he
smart.
learned the industry. And that was all happened because he asked himself the question, who can I get to pay me so I can learn the industry? How can I
Wow.
get paid to learn that industry? Instead of saying, how can I learn the industry? Okay, how can I learn it? Well, you get an internship. Great. No, 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 no. How can I get paid to learn that industry? Great. It brings you, it fetches you a different answer.
Mm.
So make the questions constructive. Third, don't offer the questions as agendas, right? Something with like, I'm asking you this question really because I want you to apologize, really because I want to show you how smart I am, right? That's not really going to bring you a space of exploration. You want to offer questions as gifts. And that really comes rooted in this thing about curiosity. What am I curious about? I don't know the answer.
Right.
When I say agenda, like I ask a question because I know where we're going to get to. That means I have an agenda about where we're going to end up. And you can feel it. Whoever you're talking to can feel it. How often does someone come to you and ask you a question where you could tell why are they asking me this question? They already know the answer. What are they fetching for? So you're not really there to have a conversation. You're trying to navigate what the politics of this is,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
So instead, state your intention. Hey, I'm really curious about this, or I don't understand this, and I was really trying to get an understanding of it because it doesn't make sense to me, but I want to understand how you got to this. That's where I'm at. That's why I'm asking this question. Like in an obviously sincere way, because you could
of
say the exact
course.
same words I said and be super antagonistic. So
Yes.
you got to really be in the place of like you got to be honest about where you're coming from. Fourth is the connective thing. Ask the question that acknowledges the people you're in conversation with. So, what do you love about writing, Michelle? If your husband says, Michelle, what do you love about writing? And your daughter says, Michelle, what do you love about writing? So, me, a guest, your husband, your daughter ask you the same question, and you might say the same exact thing. But instead, let's make it connective. Let's have the question acknowledge the person you're in conversation with. Because I'm definitely not like your husband. I'm definitely not like your daughter. Daughter's not like your husband either. Right? We're all unique. We all have unique relationships. So why aren't the questions we're asking acknowledging those unique relationships? Make it unique. So shift the question to, hey, Michelle, what do you think we both love and hate about writing?
Hmm.
See, you can't answer that the same way if I ask it your daughter and your husband because we're three different people.
Hmm.
So you want to ask questions that acknowledge, hey, this moment, which is once in a lifetime, we're having this conversation here. Why am I asking a generic question that you can answer the same way, regardless of who answers it? Why am I asking you a question that is unique, that acknowledges that you're talking to me, who we have a unique relationship, much like you have a
Yes.
unique relationship with your daughter? So,
Yes.
you know,
It's
what do you think
honoring.
we're both, yeah, what do you think we're both scared about writing? What do you think I don't understand about your writing process?
Hmm.
Right? It's just shape the question so it acknowledges, so it's different for whoever you ask or whoever, and it acknowledges the people in the conversation. And the last
And,
one,
and I mean to interrupt, but that
yeah,
last one we could use based on what we were talking about earlier. What do I need to understand about this situation that I'm not seeing or
sure,
something like that?
totally,
Yeah,
totally,
because I love
totally.
that. Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to say like, why do you vote for Trump or why do you support Kamala? You say, why do you think I misunderstand why you vote for Kamala? Why do you think I misunderstand why you vote for Trump? You ask that question, whoever asks it, he's gonna have a different response,
Yeah, totally.
right? And
Yeah.
that makes it more about us
Yeah. Becomes a
instead
bridge.
about being Trump or Kamala. Makes it about us.
It becomes
It
a bridge.
humanizes you. It's a bridge.
That's what we need. We need more
Exactly.
bridges. Yeah.
Question
Sorry.
is the bridge.
Yeah. And number
Question. So
five.
then,
Sorry, I just love that one so
no, no,
much.
no.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Um, the question is the bridge. That's good. I haven't, that's good. That's beautiful. And the last one is kind of two-sided. Bottom line, make them unexpected. You want to connect two disparate ideas together. Why? Because then the mind has to find its way across to find an answer. So I asked you before, what's your favorite lie you love telling yourself? What is the truth you hate telling yourself? Okay, you can't just let me think about that. You know, you know, what does what is your writing? What did writing the book cost you? You know, so you want to connect two disparate ideas together. You know what did our worst fight teach you about loving me?
Mm, it's good.
You know, when have you seen me the most vulnerable, and how did that scare the shit out of you?
So good.
You know, just like create questions that are like pulling different things apart so that you have to find the bridge to connect them and create a pause and okay, let me look at it from that point of view. And so the flip side of this kind of question is just another version of that is also just putting you or someone else in each other's shoes. Cool. So that's the fifth part. It's like unexpected questions that put disparate ideas together, or another version of that just putting each other in each other's shoes. Those are the five qualities that
I
really,
love
if you
it.
can put some of them or all of them in the question, you have a really interesting question and conversation that comes after. It begs really interesting answers.
Well, one of the reasons I loved our last conversation too, because we really got into your work and how we connect with the people we love. So I'm going to link that in the show notes so people can pay attention to that. And we touched upon it somewhat today because I think everything you're saying can be applied. But I also want to loop back around sort of the questions, but then practical ways to approach the curiosity. How does that parallel with what we've just covered?
The
And
curiosity
like a
is
day to
yeah.
day sort of approach. Yeah. I
So
just love giving
so
women listening like
totally
the
like what's the
tangible.
thing? Well, okay, like the tangible is okay, bottom line, here's the formula. The formula is a lot of people, know Esther Perel. She's, famous
Love her. Love.
therapist. Yeah, amazing. State
Yes.
of affairs and mating in captivity. And she says, or at least she's acknowledged by saying that, the relationship, the quality of your life is commensurate to the quality of your relationships. Okay, I'll buy that. All right, so then how do you have quality relationships? Well, I suggest that one way is quality conversation, right? One way is have really quality conversations. Okay, well, then how do you have quality conversations? Because where do we learn that? Talked about that on the last show. Well, it comes down to two things. That's what I've learned from doing this now for 11 years, over 1,250 pairs, is you need to create the space. And we can talk about what that means. It means about creating the space where you're giving people permission about what's expected behavior of them and what's not. So you're creating a safe space, which means boundaries, there's rules, and giving permission. Number two is you ask well constructed questions, which we just reviewed. I just gave you the 5 things. But in terms of the space, we have to be aware of where are we at in the home of our relationship. You don't sleep in the kitchen, Michelle, and you don't cook in the bedroom. When you're in the kitchen, what there's certain it's designed for certain activities.
Yes.
Bedroom is designed for other activities. The living room and the fireplace is designed for other activities. The spaces in our relationships are also the conversations are also designed for certain types of conversations. If you're washing the dishes and your husband comes home, says, "Why do you love me?" You're not wondering why you love your husband. You're wondering, what the fuck? Why is he asking me this when I'm washing the dish? Where's this coming from? Right? You got to create the
Totally.
space.
Totally.
And I don't
Totally.
mean and I don't mean like lighting candles, which is nice and not, but creating the space means simply articulating your intention. Where are you coming from? And then hopefully you can also articulate the boundaries like, hey, that's why our card games are great, right? It's a box. It's like, hey, I have these card games or the book. It's cool. Let's play a game. Let's read the book, ask the 12 questions. Okay. So now when the questions come up, you're not wondering what's the context, where are these questions coming from? What are you supposed to do? No, you know. You know where you're at. You're in the kitchen, you're cooking, you know? So we have to be cognizant of the spaces we're in and that we create. And then the questions we ask that are well constructed that both create the space for exploration, but also in the shape of the questions, they also reinforce the space.
Yes.
So the questions are well constructed, and the effect of a well constructed question is not just exploration, but the reinforcement of the space that you're both in, of the room that you're both in, the kind of conversation you're both having.
So when I sit with you, I just feel hopeful. The work that you do is so powerful, and you're truly committed to helping people reframe and see life in a different way that connects us. Like I do like, I know I came up with the word, but I do like the idea of this bridge based on the work that you're doing. So I'll give you that. Use it as
Thank you.
if
I will.
in
I
your
will quote
marketing,
you.
if it you don't
I
need
will
to.
quote you.
You don't need to. I'm teasing a little bit. But there's so many beautiful things that I took away. Pay attention to where you're giving your attention and to what you're giving your attention,
Mm,
because there are outside sources vying for it at every moment of our days,
mm,
and we can use it for sources of positive or negative. Really, the it's up to us. We're in control of that. So pay attention to that.
amazing.
Commit to your relationships
Mm,
because they are the heart of whatever that quote is that you just used from Esther Perel, but they are the heart of our lives. They're literally the heartbeat of our lives. And
mm,
you can choose to soften and see and use the curiosity we've been talking about through this entire conversation to invite people in and create. So we're going to improve the questions and also create the right environment
mm.
so that we can hear and be heard and have it actually be an opportunity to connect versus like make somebody wrong or figure out a way to be right. It's approaching it with a completely different lens. Like it's just, I felt this way last time. I felt a little emotional because it's like I just feel like our souls want to be connected in this way. I do think hope is always important, but
Hmm.
also tools. And you've also given us these really constructive tools, the five components that construct a good question, and then also how we integrate that with the curiosity and everything we talked about. And apparently, we can also read some poetry to get a little more creative, which actually I love poetry. I do, and I don't read enough of it. Is there anything I didn't ask, though, you think that's important to add to the conversation before we wrap up?
That was beautiful. That was an awesome wrap up. That was beautiful. Well done, Michelle. I'm
You,
stoked
you
to
like
play hear that
it?
playback. I got inside. No, I think you're right. I think hope is essential, and I think I don't know how the world operates when you're a parent. I just don't understand how parents operate when their hearts are running around them and they don't know what can happen to their children. And God bless like the people who are in war zones or are affected by famine or like, I just don't understand how the world operates. And there's so much pain and it's like I'm just in awe of humanity. I mean, I'm in awe of humans who deal with pain and trauma. And I just try to do my best to like contribute. And actually I can end on this. I just realized so I'm learning Spanish and everything. And contribute in Spanish is contribuir, contribuir, which if you break it down, it's contribuir, which means with the tribe you go.
Beautiful.
So to contribute means to go with your tribe, to go where your tribe, like to go with your tribe together, right? And I think that's just a beautiful word for a way of seeing contribution because we're not alone. We're like part of each other and part of humanity. And so, what are we doing with our contribution?
That's right. And like what you said, be the change, the Gandhi quote.
Mm.
We can lead it. And you're doing a beautiful job, and you have been for over a decade. And I'm excited to see what you continue to do. And for all the women listening today, if they want to learn more about you and all the cool projects and the game and the book, where do I direct them, Topaz?
Theskindeep.com. Theskindeep.com.
Yeah. And the ladies, all the show notes are on your podcast player, which I love about the tech now. I used to send them to thegoodlifecoach.com, but literally you pick
Mm-hmm.
up your phone, it's in the show
Yeah.
notes, you click and you get access to Topaz and go check out the body of work that he's done with the and like you will just be blown away and the game and the book and all of it because without each other, without our contribution to remember that we are part of this tribe, this human tribe, we are not separate. It's an illusion. We do have hope. So I am so grateful to have been in conversation with you again. It's always so rich and interesting, and it's fun to see where it's going to go. So thanks for coming
Yeah.
back, Topaz.
So good to be back. Thank you, Michelle.